Hey y'all, hey, it's your girl Morgan Renee tuning in for another reading of Storytime with Morama. We're finishing up Trying to Sleep in the Bed You Made by Virginia D. Berry and Donna Grant. We're in chapter 22 and we're going to get right into it. Hold up, I guess we're not getting right into it. I gotta charge my phone. Hold on. One moment. I be thinking I'll be prepared, and then it just don't be so. Well, if you're not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please make sure that you do so. It's my name, Morgan, M-O-R-G-A-N, Myers, M-Y-E-R-S. And on the page, you'll see a red logo with a yellow M inside, which stands for my friend, Morgan, which are my initials, Morgan and Myers. People on Morgan, education, entertainment, tutorials, whatever I'll be doing. So, let's get this situated. All right, we are good to go. So, it's been getting juicier and juicier. Let's get into it. Chapter 22. You're my father. PJ told me the boy's been praising you to high heaven, Patricia. Turner's voice crackled over his speakerphone, but Pat strained to hear every precious word. That makes my day. She was in a crappy mood, just back from a meeting in the rubber room where Grav had announced that CGG was seriously considering a buyout offer from Trafalgar Trace. Pat had filed out of the room in a stupor. Did PJ tell you I'll have a sample tape for the next board meeting? If you won't be there, I'll message her a copy. That's why I called. I've got business in D.C., so I won't be at the meeting, but on Friday I'm attending the Minority Business Conference at West Center. I'm staying till Saturday for a workshop. Why don't you meet me there? My secretary can reserve your room, and you'll be my guest at the banquet. We'll find some time to look at that tape. Something about the offer didn't sit right with Pat. I'm in kind of a pressure situation at work. Seems we're a takeover target. Relax. Enjoy it. Hopefully they'll be as gentle as I am when I take over a company. I appreciate the offer, Turner, but I'm sure you'll be too busy. The only time I have is the time I make, and I haven't made much for you. I'm very hot on this package you put together. Been bragging about it to some very influential people in Congress. I get a kick out of telling them how the private sector gets results while they're still waiting on a fact-finding study to tell them what any idiot knows. Besides, lady, there'll be folks at the banquet you should meet unless you have all the contacts you need. You can never have too many phone numbers on file. Pat always said no when that's what she meant, but she couldn't make the rule apply to Turner Hughes. He was offering her entree, and she was acting like a scared little girl. Why do I have such trouble reading him? It's all that nonsense Marcus put in my head. Marcus was talking good sense into her head. She's talking to this man, and clearly he's flirting and desiring her body and complimenting her clothes and this whole daddy that she's trying to get close to. Girl, we don't break the ice. Okay, I'll join you, but I have my secretary take care of the room. My expense account can use the workout. That's right. I'll wager you negotiated yourself a pretty nice package to go with that new promotion. I'll congratulate you properly when I see you Friday. Pat hung up and sat twirling the phone cord around her finger. It had been a very good year. Zabriskie moved to senior VP, head of operations, and true to his word, he orchestrated Pat's elevation to VP, head of broadcasting. She made sure Turner was sent an announcement. The promotion quadrupled her pressure, but she handled the load and enjoyed the perks. She bought her Jaguar and closed on a 2-bedroom co-op the same week. She even planned to scout for a place in Oak Bluffs this August. Turner would probably be on an island then, too. Once PJ realized Pat wouldn't blow his cover with Turner or Edwina, he cooperated on her proposal for AHUP. Turner spent most of his time managing the Hughes Company's holdings and politicking for a cabinet post, so overseeing a hand up was PJ's domain. Pat's ad campaign would mean a higher profile for the organization, a definite plus for him as well as for Turner. Within a short time, Pat had the board's approval to move ahead with the project, and Pat's ascension to VP gave her the clout to move her pet project smoothly. So far, Pat's contact with Turner had been minimal, and she had preferred it that way. She worked her show and called in favors to make sure the final product was solid, and now the prize was in sight. And she fantasized about the moment when she would finally share her secret with her father, maybe over dinner in Oaks Bluff. Marcus was wrong about him. Pat played with the buttons on her phone. He still hasn't called me back. Oh, that was a question mark. He still hasn't called me back? Last month when Pat heard Marcus had re-injured his arm, she was speechless, but she wasn't surprised. Everybody tried to tell him it was too soon. From all accounts, his baseball career was over. He had worked so hard, and in an instant, it was all gone. She found out he was in town seeing specialists and left a message at his hotel. She wanted to lend an ear, encourage him to look for the next door to open, whatever he needed to keep going. What would I do if that happened? Pat shook off the thought, grabbed the notes for her next meeting, and told her secretary she wouldn't be in on Friday. Pat had planned to get up early Friday to pack, but the intercom woke her pre-dawn. You picked a hell of a time to respond to your messages. It's 4 o'clock in the morning, in case you hadn't noticed. Pat stepped aside to let Marcus in. She smoothed one hand across her just-woke-up wild hair and pulled her robe to the other. You want a donut? He brushed past her and trudged toward the kitchen. Maybe the sugar will wake me up. Pat followed him, flipped the coffee maker on, and rummaged through the donut bag. Any buttermilk ones? Who used to make buttermilk donuts when we were kids? Aunt Lord Gail's mother. How come y'all start speaking? You did not wake me up to discuss me and Gail. She bit into a cruller. Look, I'll leave. Hold on, let me back up. Because I don't... Who asked for the donut? Him or her? Hold on. Let me slow down. This message is brought to you by Live Alkaline Water, black on water from black on land. Might as well get it from the black man or woman. We do distribute these all throughout North Carolina, especially in the Greensboro area. We also ship worldwide. So if you need some of this live hydration, hit me up. I get you right. Back to our regular scheduled program. So you picked a hell of a time to respond to your messages. It was 4 o'clock in the morning, in case you hadn't noticed. Pat stepped aside to let Marcus in. She smoothed one hand across her just-woke-up wild hair and pulled her robe to with the other one. Is that rain in the background? No, there's no rain. I don't know what you're hearing, but nope, no rain. You want a donut? He brushed past her and trudged toward the kitchen. Maybe the sugar will wake me up. Pat followed him, flipped the coffee maker on, and rummaged through the donut bag. Any buttermilk ones? Who used to make buttermilk donuts when we were kids? Aunt Gail's mother. How come y'all start speaking? You did not wake me up to discuss me and Gail. She bit into a cooler. Look, I'll leave, all right? I shouldn't have come in the first damn. Relax. Let's take the donuts in the living room. The coffee will be ready in a minute. Maybe he shouldn't have come. Marcus sat on the sofa. Pat saw him wince as he moved his arm. Does it hurt bad? Nah, it's getting better every day, he protested and tapped the cast. I'll beat this. You want to talk about it? Ain't nothing to talk about. It was a bullshit AAA game. The pitcher hung one up where I like him, and I was aiming for left field. Then, crack! I felt my arm snap like a dry tree branch. The California docs told me I could forget baseball. I came here to see my own doctors, but they said the same damn thing. Is that what you want to know? Marcus stared down at the floor. I don't even know what the hell I'm doing here. I don't either, but you can eat donuts in your hotel room. If there's something else on your mind, you came here to talk, then spit it out. Pat went to get the coffee. When she returned, Pat saw his jaw working even in the dim light. Shit, Pat, you don't get it. Get what? You got hurt, but you were hell-bent on coming back for spring no matter what anybody said to you. And guess what? You're in a damn cast again. Now the doctor can't piece you together enough to play ball. When will you be satisfied? When you're crippled? Marcus, you won the series with 2 different teams. Yeah, you could have had an even brighter career if you weren't injured, but if I had wings, I could fly. It's not time yet. Can't you see that? Marcus pounded his fist on his knee. How much money do you have to make? It's not the money. I'm not done yet. I have to leave my mark so they won't forget. Forget that Freddie should be where you are? You're the one who can't forget that. He was my brother and he's dead. I ain't ever going to forget. He slid back on the sofa, scrubbed his hand over his chin. I hired a car this afternoon, went out to St. Albans. I ain't been back since Mom and Pop left. The house is painted different, but there are 2 boys in the driveway working on their bikes. His eyes clouded over a second. I wasn't sure I could find your old place, but as soon as I turned back the block, I knew. It's all boarded up, graffiti everywhere. You know something? I wanted to burn the place down. Sometimes it seems like it was 100 years ago, and sometimes it feels like yesterday. I know. You remember the part by Aqueduct? There was a gang going on, so I had the driver stop. He smiled. I had some fun there, racing to catch fly balls, digging in that old dented cooler Coach used to bring. I'd freeze my arm out trying to get the last orange crush. I bragged that I was going to be better than Roberto Clemente. Marcus, that was Freddie, not you. You didn't even like baseball. He sucked his teeth, looked away from her, somewhere far beyond the room. Sometimes I think this baseball thing is more about him than it is about you. Yeah, well, he didn't get his chance to play because he's 6 feet under. You didn't put him there. Why am I talking about this? You don't know shit about it. Marcus got up to leave. I don't. I was there. I saw the whole thing, probably better than you because I wasn't wrestling. Freddie was wrong for hiding that gun in his bag, period. It could have gone off and shot Gail, you, me, somebody on the street, your parents. He's the only one dead. And I'm sorry, but I don't think it should have been somebody else instead, do you? Marcus didn't answer. Who's this scammer in my comments? Brianna, be gone. We don't, doing all that over here now. I'm sorry, and I don't think it should have been somebody else instead, do you? Marcus didn't answer. She walked over and stood in front of him. He sidestepped her and headed for the door. Haven't you once been mad at him for pulling such a stupid stunt? I have. That shot changed all our lives, forever. Freddie was old enough to know he should have left that gun where he found it and told somebody about it. He was your brother, your loved one, but he did it, not you. And it's time you stop whipping yourself for it. Somebody's got to carry the weight. Only the person responsible, and that's not you. Freddie would have called you a chump for taking the rap for what he did. Nobody blames Marcus Carter but Marcus Carter. All your penance and records aren't going to change that as much as you want them to. Marcus paused, his hand on the doorknob. Look, I just figured you understand what I'm going through, that you be pulling for me. I am pulling for you. You got a funny way of showing it. It may not be what you want to hear, but I say it the way I see it. You're good at giving advice. You should learn to take it. If you're referring to Turner Hughes, I have that under control. You tell him he's your daddy? Not yet, but then you don't have nothing under control. He opened the door. They stood face to face for a moment. Later, Pat fumed at Marcus all the way to the West Center. She stood impatiently in the hall, waiting while the bellman unlocked her room on the executive floor, handed her the coded key card. He flipped on the light, stepped aside, and she saw the roses scarlet with blossoms the size of her fist arranged in a cut crystal vase. She opened the card. Cocktails at 6:30. Looking forward to the evening. I hope you wear something red. Pat had planned to wear a red chiffon dress, but she was glad she brought the black beaded one, too. Or maybe the aubergine sheath. Suits, dresses, shoes, delicates of everything because she couldn't make up her mind. She tossed them on the spare bed over chair backs. What's appropriate attire for introducing yourself to your father? After a shower, she was all shaky thumbs with her hair and makeup like a divorcee on her first blind date. By 6 o'clock, she was dressed, but the room was a disaster. She phoned Turner's room. He answered on the first ring. She thanked him for the roses, and they arranged to meet at 6:30 in the lounge. I like to be early so I can pick my spot, he said. Pat saw him as soon as she walked in. He looked at ease in his tux, scotch in hand. He leaned against the bar, laughing at a story being told by a man who resembled a chocolate chip with legs. Pat detected a hint of disappointment when Turner saw her, dressed in black, not red, but he greeted her with a firm handshake and a wide-open warmth. He introduced her by her name, company and title, to his companion, Henry Small, president of a hair care products lab, who shook her fingertips and checked out the condition of her hair. Turner led her to the scenic elevator. Perfect timing. Henry could bore the paint off a wall, but his company made good products. He's drowning in piss-poor distribution, though. I'm trying to buy him out and sell the hair care company I know is looking for a Netflix line. Remind me not to play poker with you. I'm very unlucky at cards, he replied. Only a handful of guests had arrived, and bartenders bustled with last-minute setups. Turner gave the room a 360-degree once-over and selected a spot by a column just opposite the entryway. Then he snagged a waiter, slipped a 50 in his breast pocket, and had a chat about making sure he and Pat had drinks in their hands as needed. You leave nothing to chance. Pat stepped back. He seemed overpowering up close. Not if I can stack the deck in my favor. I treat every party like it's mine. I enjoy it better, and I always feel I'm supposed to enjoy it. He paused a moment. I like your perfume. You know, you always reminded me of somebody, but I can't sneak up on who it is. Oh, so tell me, this agency merger, are you on solid ground or the slippery slope? Pat explained the CGG, Trafalgar, Trace Saga, relieved he had changed the subject. My advice is don't get caught between somebody's loyalty and a great big check. They'll knock you out of the way before the ink dries, and they won't stop to say excuse me. By the time the waiter returned with their drinks, people streamed in at a steady clip, and the three-quarters of them stopped first at the column where Turner was holding court. Names rolled off his tongue, and he had a clap on the back and a glad word for each one. Turner introduced Pat to publishers, radio network owners, builders, and importers. While Turner entertained, Pat was at the center of another social circle as she discussed common links with her new acquaintances. She was aware that many were curious about this woman with Turner Hughes, but that was her secret. She glanced at Turner and think how smooth they were together. They could both chat up anybody and not break a sweat. She was impressed with how far his smarts had gotten him and eager to study at his knee. You still not ready to let go of my lazy sack of a son-in-law yet? I got the perfect job for that, PJ. Got a mop and a bucket with his name on it. You just give me the word. William Lewis's blue ruffled tuxedo shirt matched his wife Indianola's ample caftan. Pat had to hold back a smirk when Edwina's parents stopped by to say their hellos. Bill, you are too hard on my man, PJ. He's doing a fine job. A hand up has grown so fast that I got him keeping tabs on all that government rigmarole we have to comply with on our job training contracts. He's in Cleveland tonight, scoping out a site for a new center. Whatever he's doing, you must be paying him too much. Even in the climate control hotel, Indianola wore a sheen of sweat, and her abundant breasts undulated with every word. Lord have mercy, you should have seen the bills he and Edwina had the nerve to ask us to pay. But you keep those big fat paychecks of his coming, you hear? Pat thoroughly enjoyed refreshing the Lewis's memory about her days at Southridge with their daughter. She gave Indianola her card, sent regards to Edwina. I wish Eddie had spent less time running man wild and more time with girls like you. Maybe then she would have seen past the smooth talker she married. Maybe not. Pat just smiled. Turner was on the dais. He had arranged for Pat to sit with Henry Small, and during dinner, Pat heard more about good hair habits than she ever wanted to know. She talked to the fuel oil distributor sitting next to her, but his wife wasn't crazy about that. Occasionally, she'd look at Turner, wanting to be up there, listening to his stories, basking in his attention. After speeches and coffee, Turner came up behind her chair, put his hands on her shoulder, and whispered in her ear, "Thanks for babysitting." Turner's hot breath on her ear gave Pat the creeps. Henry thanked Turner for the loan of his scintillating dinner companion, then gave Pat his card. She forgot to give him one in exchange. Business is officially closed for the day. How about a nightcap? Turner had looped her arm through his, and they strolled to the elevators. That felt like trouble. On a date, it's when she would decide if she was sleeping alone tonight. But whatever was going on in Turner's head, she knew this was not a date. I'm about done for the night. They rode to the lobby in a crowded elevator. Pat stared out at the atrium until they reached L. A brandy won't kill you. Don't tell me you're gonna let an old man outrun you. No, it's just that we'll have to set up early. To view the tape before your seminar. I've had the hotel reserve a VCR for me and a conference room. Pat edged over to the elevators that went to the guest floors and pressed the button. You're very intense. My eagle eyes tell me you're extremely tense, too. He let go of her arm, stepped behind her, and massaged her shoulders. But now's the time to relax. Pat grew more rigid as Turner needed. She slipped his grip and faced him. I've just had a long day, and after you see this tape, I'll be able to relax, if you like it, that is. Doors opened and Pat hurried into the car, pushed for her floor. Turner followed and pushed every number in between. You need to let that feel-good catch up with you. He looked squinty-eyed and rangy, edging toward her, but then two giggling preteen girls dashed in. They looked back and forth at each other for several floors, then one ran off and the other followed. Just let me get to my floor. What time tomorrow? 8 o'clock? Turner eclipsed the space in front of her. How about whatever time we wake up? His lips approached hers in slow motion. This can't happen. Pat did the first thing that came to mind and started to cough, dry and unstoppably, until the tears ran from her eyes. At her floor, she stepped off. I've got to quit smoking. She blocked the door with her hand. What time tomorrow? 8:30. My suite. I'll order breakfast. He looked peeved. Good night. Pat's pulse throbbed in her temples like she dodged a bullet aimed between her eyes. She hurried to her room and fumbled clumsily with the keypad. Finally inside, she sat on the bed, trembling so violently she needed two hands to light a cigarette. She never thought of Turner Hughes as a man, only as the father who would welcome her if she could prove herself worthy, but he obviously had other ideas. You obviously ain't told this man he your daddy yet. You see, he coming on you. You had ample time. What am I going to do? Tell him he your daddy. What seemed simple before was now as clear as mud. Being claimed by her father would make up for years of feeling like a miserable mistake, but she hadn't considered her interests could be misconstrued. Walking away from this situation wasn't an option. She had entangled herself and a lot of colleagues in A-Hub, and she felt obligated to finish the project. I could complete the commercial and disappear. Nobody's going to come looking. But she couldn't let him believe Patricia Reed was a flake. That would be devastating. I have to tell him tomorrow. That way, she could stop ducking his advances and begin with him again. This time with no secrets. The monogram cuff was in her purse. Link was in her purse. There was nothing to it but to do it. She showered a long time, deciding whether to bring it up before or after he watched the tape, rehearsing how she would tell Turner Hughes she was his child. Does the name Verna Reed ring a bell? Did you ever notice my hands are like yours? You know how you said I remind you of somebody? I know who it is. Why did you let your family run us away? She phoned the desk for a wake up and to have the VCR brought to Turner's room. Then she lay awake smoking and waiting while morning took its sweet time to dawn. Portfolio under her arm, cuffling in the pocket of her plum suit, Pat trudged down the hall. Turner, the truth is, you're my father. I'm your daughter. Daddy? No matter how she began or ended, it sounded deranged, the kind of outside nightmare you have when you start sipping at happy hour and pour yourself home when the joint closes, the kind of sick dream that makes you swear you'll stop drinking. At 8:35, Pat knocked on Turner's door. It's open. She turned the knob with the weight of her whole life dragging behind her and stepped into a living room furnished in talks, tans, and creams, and tranquil as a sigh. The only, I guess it's talks, tranquil as a sigh. The only splash of color was a massive array of magenta flowers that filled the mouth of the fireplace. The aroma of coffee surrounded her as soon as she stepped in. Reflected in a wall of mirrors, she saw champagne chilling in a silver cooler next to a dining table set for two. I hope you're a big eater. Dressed in navy silk pajamas, a glass of champagne in hand, Turner relaxed in an overstuffed chair. Champagne or coffee? Pick your poison. Coffee for me. She sat her purse and folder by the table and made a beeline for the spot to keep him in his seat. Have they brought up the VCR yet? No, which means you have to relax with me until they do. He patted the ottoman in front of him. Why don't you bring those shoulders here and let me work on them a while? I don't think that's a good idea. I'll have to tell her before the tape. Turner was clearly starting where he left off. You think too damn much. Let me ask you this. Have I offended you in any way? No, not at all. Are you married? Turner put down his glass and got up. No. She had planned to take control, but Turner was leading this tango. A lesbian? No. Some kind of religious zealot? He slithered in her direction. No, it's just, then I guess you're just an old-fashioned cock teaser. I like that in a woman, to a point. He grabbed her hand before she could move it. Let me show you the point. No. She yanked her hand away and edged around the table. What kind of crazy shit is this? Act like you've never been with a man before. You're my father, Turner. The monumental words were out, and she braced for her world to shift on its axis. He looked at her a moment, expressionless, then sputtered with spiteful laughter. I've been told all kinds of wild-ass stories before, but this beats them all. I'm not lying. Verna Reed was my mother. She shoved the cufflink across the table at him. Remember this? He picked it up, twirled it in between his fingers by the stem. I've lost more of these than I can count. It means nothing. He flicked it on the table, and it rolled to the floor. You were registering voters in Swan City, North Carolina. You used to drive her home. She followed you to Richmond. She said to tell you I'm a real mustard seed. Turner examined Pat slowly, shaking his head. His eyes had a mean glint. Son of a bitch. He shuffled back to his seat, flopped in the chair, and drained his glass of champagne. I wasn't going to tell you like this. She sank into a chair at the table. You didn't give me a choice. Pat recalled the first time she saw Turner fouling the doorway of Hughes' house on the vineyard. I never blamed you for leaving. Bernie didn't care about anybody, including herself. She dumped me as soon as she got the chance. When she told me about you, I vowed to make you proud of me. I'm not like her. I made something of my life. Turner propped his head in his hand and smirked. Snagged by some 30-year-old snatch. Ain't this some shit? This isn't a plot. I'm not trying to con you. I know you don't expect me to believe you showed up with Father's Day's greeting 3 damn decades late looking for my love and devotion. So what's this going to cost me? What? The words inflamed her like she had been struck by lightning. You must have a ballpark figure in mind. I could deny this, but then you probably would have your lawyer drag my ass into court ordering blood tests and send out press releases about it. I can see it now. Another prominent black man sidelined by his roving penis. I won't have this mess all over the damn newspapers. I can't have a scandal, but you knew that. I admit, you're slick. Nobody's ever blindsided me before. So what's the number? I don't want your money. Turner's office fanned the blaze, and Pat's reply burned with an outraged fire. Save the high and mighty speeches. I've heard them all from my mother and grandmother. Nothing I ever did was right enough, according to them. They taught me the best way to deal with women is to say what you gotta say, to get what you want, and ignore them the rest of the time. You could probably follow in their footsteps quite nicely. But you see, I already have a family. A son, nearly 35, and never had a job in his life. His crowning achievements are a fine tennis game, a fondness for cocaine, and an even greater fondness for my money. He's a high-class junkie who's been in every overpriced drug rehab in the country. And Daddy's little girl, he got up and yanked the bottle of champagne from its cooler. I haven't seen her since she turned 21 and came into her trust. But she's a selfish, spoiled, gold card wielding, spitting image of my ex-wife. He drowned half a glass of amber bubbles. Oh, yes, I have all the kids I plan to acknowledge. Pat stood, swathed in the charred remains of her self-esteem. I'll finish the commercial because I started it and because it benefits other people. She dug into her folio and dropped the videotape on the table. Watch it or not, I don't care. Any comments, take them to the board. There was a knock at the door. Pat gathered her things and sauntered toward it. Hand on the knob, she stopped. Verna warned me years ago that you talked with a silver tongue, but it was forked. She was right. Pat mustered one last venom-laced look at her father. He gave her a cavalier half-salute and refilled his glass. Pat yanked open the door, startling the bellman who had the VCR on the rolling cart. It was all she could do to keep her composure until she got back to her room, but it began to slip away when her key card wouldn't open the door. Shit, I hate these damn cards, she muddled as she rattled the door. Money. He asked if I wanted money. Pat was desperate to be inside, alone with her shame and despair. What the hell is wrong with the key? She kicked the door, wanted to rip it off the hinges, and was totally unnerved when someone opened from inside. What are you doing in here? Pat shot through the doorway. She saw the gray and pink blur from the corner of her eye and realized it was the maid, but she never looked at her. Pat just wanted her gone. I'm checking out. Doesn't anybody in this damn hotel know what they're doing? Pat froze near the desk. I know you don't expect me to believe you showed up with Father's Day greetings 3 damn decades late looking for my love and devotion. Turner's smug voice reverbed in her head, and suddenly the red roses he sent reignited her anger. She hurled her folio at the vase and sent it crashing to the floor. That's when she heard the gasp and realized the maid was still in the room. Would you leave? Now? I gotta go home. Pat snatched clothes from the floor and the bed and balled them in her suitcase. She pulled the red chiffon dress off the hanger and wanted to bury her face in it and cry, but the maid was still glued to her spot. Are you deaf or just plain stupid? I said get the hell out. To keep herself from sobbing, she continued packing until she heard the door click of the door closing. He thinks he can buy whatever he wants, and that includes people. Althea Satterfield had told her that about Turner years ago. It angered Pat when she heard it, but Althea was as right as Verna had been. Damn you, I hate you, Pat sobbed, and the tears flowed from the shattered place in her heart she had hoped her father's love would fill. Pat rode her staff with a crop and short reins the next week. Turner Hughes had blown up in her face, but she still had control of her career, and she needed to stay focused to maneuver through CGG's looming takeover. Every person who reported to her was called to account for their decisions. A usually reliable assistant producer lost a director's reel, and Pat fired him on the spot. She was a bitch on wheels, but she felt it would get her department through the intense scrutiny. Soon, the sight of Gravitt, Green, and Zabriskie leading the advance team from Trafalgar Trace worldwide through the agency became a regular occurrence. The enemy wore ventless Italian suits, spoke with overstarched British accents, and the longer they stayed, the more the acquisition looked like a done deal, and the rumors circulated through the halls of CGG were at least as creative as any commercial the shop had ever produced. Some of the gossip had everyone at CGG fired and replaced by Trafalgar Trace personnel. Others theorized that key staff would have their brains picked, then get pink slips once their usefulness was exhausted. Clients were restless because Trafalgar, they could have came up with an easier name. Trafalgar handed this their direct competition. Chaos was always the norm at CGG, but the office seemed to Pat like a throbbing toothache that wouldn't be soothed until the molar was saved or pulled. After weeks of uncertainty, Zabriskie took Pat to a watering hole across town from the office and told her the merger was a go. He swore her to secrecy, then revealed that Green was taking his megabucks and retiring, and CGG would become Trafalgar Gravitt Trace NY. Don't sweat, changes should be minimal. We'll be an autonomous shop with a global support system and only gets better from here. Pat came in early the morning the official announcement were to be made. When Zabriskie called and asked her to come up, she figured it was to go over last-minute details. From the first time I met you, I knew you had what it took to make it in this business or any other. She felt the vibe. This isn't good. There's a point here. Why don't you get to it? I wanted this to come from me. There was a wave silence, then she realized what was happening. Son of a bitch, you're telling me I'm fired? His lips moved, but the words were out of sync, like a badly dubbed foreign film. Trafalgar has someone slated for your position. Zabriskie was almost in tears. I did everything I could. You'll have time to negotiate a settlement, and I guarantee it will be a hefty package. I'll see to it. I don't know what else to say. So I was promoted to VP for what? To keep me quiet, to keep my crew rolling steady until they were ready to toss me overboard. I did everything right. By the book. Pat couldn't feel her feet on the floor as she stood up. Be dignified. I'll be gone in an hour. Pat, it's not you. This is politics. You've been a... She slipped her hands into the pockets of her jacket to keep them from shaking. A fine, shining, visible example of forward thinking and affirmative action. Come on, Lloyd. Everything about my being here is politics. Who are we kidding? I've been good for the CGG image. Pat turned to leave, but she spun around and faced him again. So, who is it? Who's my replacement? He took his glasses off. Althea Satterfield. She's already in from L.A. I'll be damned. In the halls, Pat spoke to no one. She wanted to get her things and leave before the hoopla started, before Althea came to claim her office and became HNIC. Pat's secretary sat at her desk crying. Pat didn't say a word. She couldn't. She walked into her office to find her desk empty and her belongings and boxes by the door. Now that's rude. Let somebody else pack her stuff. A guard waited to escort her out the building. She had sweat blood for this company, and they had treated her like a criminal. When she got home, Pat dumped ice cubes in a tumbler, filled it with vodka, and started damage control. Glad she made a habit of keeping a copy of her office Rolodex at home, she called everybody, clients, associates, at other agencies, directors, to vent her rage. Pat got up each morning, burning with the desire for revenge. She made lunch dates with executives at rival shops who treated her to great meals, but told her they had nothing open at her level. She saw headhunters, arranged a flurry of interviews, but then one night she sat alone in the dark in front of the television. She couldn't keep her mind on the programs, but she surfed the channels, dissected the commercials. She found each one sillier, more insulting and annoying than the next. I've been killing myself to do this for 10 years, and for what? She couldn't find one reason that made any sense. Not one she cared about anyway. She even had to pull out of the A-Hub project because people who had become involved to stay on her good side didn't have to anymore. Suddenly, her world had shrunk to a population of one. Excuse me. That is the end of chapter 22. Dang, poor Patricia. So we'll pick up at chapter 23 on another day. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I'll be back with another read of this soon. All right, peace.